Thank you, sir. So we will call the Health Insurance and Long-Term Care Issues Committee to order. I think will take a roll.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we'll start with Health Committee members who have registered for the call, and if I see some of you who are on Zoom who didn't register, I'll call you out as well. Representative Deborah Ferguson.
Yep, I'm here.
Representative Tammy Nuccio. Representative Rod Furness. Representative Matt Lehman.
I'm here.
Representative Rachel Roberts will be joining. She just sent the note. She'll be about 5 minutes late. Representative Edmund Jordan.
Here.
Senator Robert Mills.
Present.
Senator Vicky Sawyer. Representative Brenda Carter.
Present.
Okay. Assemblyman Jarrett Gandolfo. Senator Pamela Helming. Representative Lacey Hall. We have Chair Westfall. Are there any other legislators present that I did not call?
Yes, sir. Representative Landis.
Yes, Senator Hackett's here. Sorry to
Jim
interrupt.
Gooch.
Okay, we have Senator Hackett, Representative Carl Anderson of South Carolina, Representative Jim Gooch of Kentucky. I did also see Senator Utke, his name, there he is, okay. Senator Utke of Minnesota. Anyone else? Okay, you're all set, Mr. Chairman. We will need a motion to waive the quorum.
Yes, we need a motion to waive a quorum. Do we have one? Anybody unmuted? I think
I
Matt,
move we waive the quorum.
you have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, aye. The ayes do
Aye.
have it. We'll waive a quorum. Well, good afternoon or good morning if you're on the West Coast. Thank everybody for joining in today. I know everybody's busy and I really appreciate the participation today. Before I go any farther, I just want to say how honored I am to be the chair of the committee and how Assemblywoman Hunter did such a great job chairing the committee for the last few years and look forward to building upon her great works. The purpose of today's meeting is for the committee to conduct some business in advance of the March meeting in San Diego, so the committee is able to handle all the issues on the San Diego agenda in timely manner. The committee has a lot of work to do over the next several months. I asked all of you, I asked for this interim meeting because I want to make sure that we are proceeding for time and for people to do unduly rush. Today, we will provide an opportunity for a committee and discussion on the NCOIL Pharmacy Benefit Management, the PBM legislative regulatory model.
Mr. Chairman, just a moment, please. Again, we just remind everyone when you're not speaking to keep your phone on mute, please.
If you can mute, yeah, please. Okay, so we will again, the PMB Regulatory Model Act that will be scheduled for reconsideration and readopted in San Diego. Per NCOIL's bylaws, all NCOIL model acts are scheduled to be considered for readoption every 5 years. And a model will be readopted at sunsets. I note that the model will not be voted on for readoption today. Rather, this will be an opportunity for comments and discussion in advance of the San Diego meeting, where the actual vote will take place. It is unlikely that the San Diego agenda will allow for additional discussion on the PBM model, so we have the entire discussion now by simply holding a vote until March. Let's get started. We have opportunity for comments, discussion on NCOIL's Pharmacy Benefit Management, the PBM Regulation Model Act, originally adopted December 8th, 2018, is scheduled for consideration and readoption in 2023 NCOIL spring meeting. The NCOIL PBM model was originally adopted December of 2018, like I said, and hard to believe quickly 5 years have passed. The development of a model is a good example of how NCOIL is able to discuss a complex issue and develop model policy in timely, efficient manner. Indeed, I think the development and adoption of this model really makes a turning point for the organization. There would be benefit stages of new leadership. An organization that hasn't looked back since. We can stop there. Do we have any comments? Anybody wants to talk about the Model Act?
Is,
Unmute yourself and be recognized.
is it just legislators right now, or is it the outside folks now? Sorry.
Well, we will do, let's do legislatures first, then we'll do outside folks.
I think we're gonna switch it around, Mr. Chairman, and let the interested party speak, and then,
Sounds good.
let the legislators respond, but I think we're gonna start with former Senator Rayford, since he was the
Okay.
sponsor.
Yeah, the sponsor of the model, former Senator Rayford, the former NCOIL president Rayford is here today. Jason, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Westfall, and hello to all of my old colleagues, and very happy to be invited to speak on this matter today. I will say many of you that are on this call were present when we took this up, and I thought I would make my comments based upon positives that I've seen from NCOIL taking up this issue, and then also speak to possibly some improvements that might need to be made in the future down the road. Hearkening back to that time, and of course, I can remember calling Tom Considine up. I was president of NCOIL at that time, and absolutely, you have to think about the time period. The healthcare industry was up in arms over the PBM issues. The pharmacists obviously were up in arms, were struggling. The insurance industry, every aspect across the country, were struggling with how do we get some accountability, because we began to see that pharmacy benefit managers were underpaying many of the independent pharmacists around the country, while they were paying up charges and even more out to their affiliate pharmacies. And we begin to see this disparity. And the problem with all of this is that it was tough to pull back the RX curtain, which actually became a hashtag at the time, if you remember, behind the RX curtain. Well, as we begin to pull that back, we begin to see, yes, there's some real disparities. And so in all of that vacuum of leadership, I reached out to Tom. We talked with leadership at NCOIL. We said, we need to take a stand on this. And if you remember a phrase that got oft repeated during that time, you know, doctors answer to medical boards, insurance companies answer to the insurance departments, pharmacists answer to pharmacy boards, but the PBMs answer to nobody. And so as we look at this, and we saw that many of the complaints dealing with the issue often got brought to the feet of the insurance commissioners, and then obviously to the legislators that are making the laws, we felt that it probably made the best sense to authorize the insurance departments of each state to have the authority to regulate the PBM industry. The positives that came out of this, because I could speak a long time about it, I've gotten very passionate on the issue. I will say that it was probably the strongest bipartisan piece of legislation that I ever was a part of. I saw great friends that came together that were Democrats and Republicans from each side of the aisle at NCOIL and said, we've got to do something to take a stand. We never were trying to do anything that harmed PBMs per se. We just said it's time for a referee to be in play. They've been playing street ball with nobody holding them accountable. We just wanted everybody to have a fair and level playing field, and that the insurance departments could look into it and have a say. So it was not only a strong bipartisan bill that happened nationally at NCOIL, that happened locally in many of the states. You know, I don't know what Will's count is right now, but at one time they told me 40 states had filed legislation based in some way off of the NCOIL model, and over 200 pieces of legislation. Other positives, NCOIL stepped up and took that lead when there was a vacuum. And I will always be proud of NCOIL's leadership at the time, because it needed, the issue needed a leader. We punched through that, and I also saw that NAIC joined. In fact, Tom, if you remember, at the time, NAIC invited me to speak as president of NCOIL at their roundtable. And some of my older colleagues at NCOIL told me it's the first time that an NCOIL president had even been asked to do that. And it was because of the PBM issue. And I was able to speak there and came out of there not only with having support from many of the commissioners that were at the NAIC, but we ended up with a lot of partners. These were NAIC commissioners that went back to their states and began to be champions for the idea of what we were trying to do at NCOIL. And that was in the face of a lot of opposition. We also came out of that seeing many of the states that have empowered their insurance commissions with the ability to regulate and monitor these practices. I could say more about this, but I don't want to take up a lot more time. There's others that want to speak. But I will tell you that of anything that we've ever done at NCOIL, this issue affects everyone across the country. It is a critical issue, and I pray that you will readopt it. And as far as what might need more focus, what I keep hearing is that in some states, they really need commissioners to enforce the authority that they've been given, because there are continual problems popping up in the states around the country.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Okay, now, are any interest parties that would like to make any comments before we go to legislatures?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Cassidy with the National Community Pharmacist Association. We represent the independent community pharmacies throughout the country. I want to thank the members of the committee for considering readoption of the model bill. But I also want to thank the committee for all the hard work that was done back in 2018 when it was initially adopted. And thank you, Senator Rayford, for making this a priority while you were during your tenure as president of NCOIL. Looking back at what's happened since 2018 in the states, the first thing that comes to mind is the floodgates were open. Since then, hundreds of bills have been introduced. You know, in truth, some were good, some were not so good, but the discussion was happening. The discussion about the impact of PBM practices on patients, employers, taxpayers, and community pharmacies. I've counted approximately 60 bills that have been passed that fall within the scope of the model bill. I give all the credit to NCOIL, as you are the standard nationwide for insurance legislation and policy. Because you are the standard, it's imperative that this NCOIL PBM model bill be readopted. Finally, I would urge this committee to consider updating the model bill in the near future. Many things have changed since 2018. There's been several court decisions, primarily the Rutledge at the Supreme Court and the Wiebe case in the 8th Circuit, that have clarified a state's authority to regulate PBMs. I would urge the committee to consider strengthening the language in the drafting note under Section 7 and adding more specific language under prohibited market practices. Specifically, I would urge the following to be addressed: patient choice issues like steering, mandatory use of pharmacies, and discriminatory copay structures, below acquisition cost reimbursements to pharmacies, reimbursements by PBMs to PBM owner pharmacies, and the fourth, and this Senator Rayford said the same thing, stronger enforcement language to guide departments of insurance or relevant regulatory body in the state. Thank you for considering the readoption of this model bill. I look forward to continuing to work with the committee on this issue and other issues in the future. And just so you know, NCPA has supported this model bill from the very beginning, and we continue to support it. So thank you for all you do.
Any further people would like to talk about it?
Yes, sir. I'd like to speak.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Sandra Guckian. I'm Vice President of State Pharmacy and Advocacy with the National Association of Chain Drugstores. We would also like to offer our thanks to the committee and to NCOIL for your leadership on this issue. It's very important not only for pharmacies who are our members, but most importantly, it impacts patients, and it impacts patients every day and in many different ways, depending upon the practices of the PBM that administers their prescription drug benefit plan. We also are supportive of a readoption of the current model. However, just as Ann Cassidy with NCPA was saying, there has been a lot of activity in the states on this issue since the model was adopted in December of 2018. And we would encourage the committee to consider looking and reevaluating the model in the context of the types of activities that are ongoing in legislatures across the country by legislators who are members of this committee to address other issues such as spread pricing, clawbacks, retroactive fees, and many of the other issues that Ms. Cassidy also outlined as well. And also, I'm sure many of you are aware that some of these topics are also being discussed by Congress and by the Federal Trade Commission. So again, thank you for your time today. We very much appreciate this opportunity, and we do hope that the committee will take some time to reevaluate and considering making some additions to the model. Thank you very much for your time.
Do you have any
Yes,
other
sir.
comments?
Look, let me do this. I'm still on my.
Anybody else like to talk about before we go to legislatures?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my name is John Cavella from the Independent Pharmacy Cooperative. We too have been involved in the beginning of this. I certainly want to echo my colleagues' comments. Something to point to that I think this committee ought to look at moving forward is you have a few states that have developed very comprehensive bills that you may want to look for follow-up. And Mr. Chairman, I would certainly point to your state's law in West Virginia. The two laws, including dealing with access to specialty drugs, that I think are good for evaluation, and also looking at what those departments in both West Virginia, but also look at New York State's laws as they develop their regulations are doing, that could provide guidance not only for the statutes, but how to flush out even on the regulation and what the departments would need to look at. And one area we're starting to see develop that we hope NIAC will address is many states are developing online complaint forms that are specific to pharmacy benefit complaints that can be used either by consumers or patients or the pharmacies. That's something we should all be urging them to develop as a model form that would get NIAC approval for all departments to use. But there certainly are areas to look at. 26 states have done licensure so far, but there are areas to start to fill in where this is going. I would also point to follow up on Ms. Guckian's point that this your federal committee ought to take very close attention to Senator Cantwell's bill to ensure that it provides federal preemptive authority to the states under the McCarran-Ferguson Act to make sure that the standards of any federal PBM licensure bill do not supersede where states have gone and regulated. That would really be an unfortunate step backwards for protecting patients and their pharmacy providers and the ultimate end payers. So thank you for the opportunity to address the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yes, sir. Any other interested parties make comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Jeff Klein, and although I represent the American Bankers Association, I'm talking more in an individual capacity just to be helpful to the committee, as others have cited state laws, because we don't have a dog in that in the debate itself, but as others have cited Congress and some state laws that have been adopted, and Troy Downey may want to speak about this later. There has been an NAIC model on PBMs, and there's recently in Tampa in December, there was a 35-page white paper which has been exposed that goes beyond licensing into some regulatory issues. So I would just bring those to the attention of the committee. I think Tom and Will are aware of that. So you can use those as additional resources in coming up with a good product, however you decide to proceed.
Thank you. Any additional people, any additional comments?
Chair, this is Miranda Motter with AHIP. I'm the Senior Vice President of State Affairs and Policy. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in just for a couple of minutes. So, I would reiterate just a couple of things that Jeff mentioned. Certainly from our perspective, some of the developments that were raised, we believe are narrow. And as I think has been raised, there is activity on the ground, whether it's litigation activity or trying to work their way through, states working their way through this issue. I would also refer to the work that is underway at NAIC. There was a recent update to a handbook for regulators And certainly if there are questions about regulatory authority and how commissioners are enforcing this, I think, that discussion with the insurance commissioners would be very important before any action, would take place that would change the model. And I certainly believe that there would be a lot of discussion and, opportunities to weigh in if there were.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes. Anybody else? Anybody else before we go to the legislature? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jonathan Buxton with Pharmaceutical Care Management Association. We are the national association that represents PBMs. We, got on the call assuming this would be a discussion of the reauthorization. So the question I'd really have is procedural. If, the will of this group is to continue further discussions, when will those occur? How will those occur? And under what format will they occur? Whether there will be members or non-members and kind of how that's going to play out. Reauthorization is one thing. Reopening is something that's going to require a lot of input because there's a lot of interested stakeholders. And we encourage the committee to consider that, especially if spring is full. Let's figure out what the procedure is. Tom, Will, somebody want to jump in on that?
Somebody jump in, yes.
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, we haven't gotten to the legislator portion of the comments yet. We here in the office have not received anything from a legislator suggesting there be any amendments to the model. We certainly did expect a vibrant discussion today, but we've had no indication from a legislator that there's any desire on the part of a member of NCOIL other than to readopt the model as is.
Okay, the chair has a question. So
Sure.
we readopt this in San Diego, then we can bring this back again, possibly summer or fall, to look at again, like some of them said, we probably need to update it. I think ours is a little different than what the NCOIL model is here in West Virginia. Is that a possibility?
So sure, just because a model is readopted on its schedule doesn't mean that if there's a wish of the membership to re-examine it in between its 5-year schedule, that can happen. Whether it's later this year or in a year and a half, models are not automatically and totally locked down in between.
That's what I thought, but we'll make sure. Thank you. Got any more
Sure.
discussion? Anybody else before we go to legislatures? Okay, seeing none. Any legislatures have any comments about this? Senator Raper did a great job. Anybody else want to talk?
Yeah, I just wanted to say really how successful the PBM bill has been. And really, I'm very grateful to Senator Raper, who really passed the law in Arkansas. And one thing that made me very happy, I think we saw from the Supreme Court Rutledge decision that maybe the ERISA wall is not so impenetrable. So I do hope we'll readopt it.
Thank you, Madam President. Anybody else?
If I can, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to piggyback on what our president just said. We are working on some issues right now in the legislature that tap into that ERISA space. And, someone said, well, we can't because it's all federal. And I said, we cracked that door open with the Supreme Court ruling in Rutledge. Let's keep pushing that door because there's a lot of things I think as us state legislators would agree, they should be under our control and they're not. And so hopefully this pushes us farther. And so when we readopt this, I think we want to readopt it with that vision of looking forward to other issues that might finally tear down that ERISA wall.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just again urge people who are not speaking to mute their lines.
Yeah, please stay muted. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. Seeing none, is there any more business come for the committee? Hearing none. Well, thank everybody for joining today. In just a moment, I'm gonna turn over, make a motion. I need a motion to adjourn. Before I do that, I look forward to seeing everybody in San Diego. I will be coming in, we called him, be coming in hot on Friday night late. I will miss the last day of our session, but we're wrapping things up probably before that. We'll have our budget passed by then. So I'll be getting them Friday night. I'll be in the PNC meeting on Saturday and everything, and our health committee on Sunday. So do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Do I second?
And then, Mr. Chairman, just before we lose
Yes.
some folks who are only here for the health committee, the new link, the link for the new room block, because the initial room block has already sold out, because this meeting is going to be so well attended. An email went out today that the link for the additional room block at the other Westin, just 3/10 of a mile away, is up and running now.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. I will now turn the meeting over to Representative Jordan for NCOIL PNC committee meeting. So thanks, everybody. Representative Jordan.
We could have a drum roll. Representative Jordan, are you on?
Senator Sawyer.
Hey, sorry, this is Senator Sawyer.
There she
I'm
is.
on, but I was not prepared to chair the committee because I was explained to me that services were not needed today, so I'm mobile at the moment.
Well, we're calling out to Representative Jordan right now. I think that's him. Representative Jordan?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. You're MIA there for a couple minutes.
But I had it unmuted, so I'm not sure how that went. But anyway, here, thank you. And Will, if you're there, we will call the PNC committee meeting to order. And if you do the roll call for us, please.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So again, we'll start with committee members that registered for the call. I'm not sure, some may have joined since the start of the Health Committee. Representative Tammy Nuccio. Representative Rita Mayfield. Representative Matt Lehman.
Here.
Representative Rachel Roberts. Senator Robert Mills.
Present.
Representative Brenda Carter.
Present.
Senator Paul Utke.
Present.
We have Vice Chair Sawyer.
Present.
Assemblyman Jarrett Gandolfo. Senator Bob Hackett.
Here.
Representative Carl Anderson.
Here.
Representative Lacey Hull. And Delegate Westfall's here.
Here. Yep.
Okay, any other legislators present that I did not call?
Yes, this is State Representative Jen Laddish Douglas from Illinois. I'll put it in the chat.
Great, thank you. I see Representative Gooch is still with us. And Representative Ferguson. Any other legislators on? Okay, Mr. Chairman, we'll just need a motion to waive the quorum.
All right, I'll entertain the motion to waive the quorum.
I move we waive a quorum.
I entertain a second.
Second.
Probably moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the quorum is waived. Again, good afternoon, and like Chairman Westfall said good morning to the folks on the West Coast, and thank you for joining the meeting today. Before I go any further, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank former Kentucky Representative Bart Rowland for all the great work he did as chair of this committee in the past 2 years. We certainly look forward to continuing that great work. And again, I certainly enjoyed my time as chair of Multi-Line Committee at NCOIL, and I'm pleased to preside over this committee again. The purpose of today's meeting is for the committee to conduct some business in advance of the March meeting in San Diego, so that we're able to handle all of our issues in a timely manner. And specifically today, we're going to continue with the discussion of Representative Lehman's Insurance Underwriting Transparency Model Act with the goal of voting on that model in San Diego. I'll just note, I certainly want to support and have supported all the work that Representative Lehman has done on this issue, and I look forward to getting this model across the finish line. And as you may know, Representative Lehman is also sponsoring this bill in his home state of Indiana that is based on this model. That bill was voted out of the Indiana House Insurance Committee earlier this week, as I understand it, and some changes were made to it, which Representative Lehman will discuss with us today. So with that, Representative Lehman, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Chairman Jordan. It's always great to be on a committee you chair. Look forward to your leadership on this committee. To all the members of the insurance committee or the property casualty committee, I appreciate your patience on some of this. I know this has been an issue we have talked about for now a couple of years. And I guess this is a culmination of some of that work. Now, what I'm going to do today, if I may, I'm going to walk you through how we kind of got here without my 30-minute dissertation, which I've had multiple times. I'll be very brief and then get to the bill. First of all, as you know, as I've said, as former president of NCOIL, our role is to build good models and build foundations. I think this bill gets us there. There's been a lot of attention to this issue as we get deeper and deeper into not just the insurance industry, but all industries, getting deeper into the artificial intelligence and the use of that. And with the insurance industry wanting to be competitive, they're driving a lot of their rating models towards the use of more and more artificial intelligence. What that's done is it's left us in a position as people who deliver the product to a situation where our clients sometimes don't know why they're seeing these rate changes that they're seeing. And so the genesis of this bill was as public policymakers trying to make sure that the consumer who we're ultimately trying to protect, whilst keeping a very competitive insurance environment, they're both served in that capacity. When we left New Orleans, we said we were getting very close. We had just a couple of issues left. I said we'd work on this, and the promise was that whatever came out of Indiana is what I would more likely bring back to San Diego for the spring, and that is where we are at. I don't know if Will provided you, I believe he did, is House Bill 1329 in Indiana. It's our omnibus insurance bill. It's 90 some pages long. I'm assuming you've all briefed yourself on an entire bill because what started out as my transparency model bill became the, hey, can I put this in there? The department had a few tweaks, and the next thing you know, it's a 98-page bill. What I'm going to focus on today, obviously, is the area of which this call is, and that is this transparency piece. And that's on pages 14 through 17 of the bill if you have it there. If not, if you have the model in front of you, I'm really going to work off of the model that we last looked at in New Orleans, would have been the model from November of 2022. And so while this is not maybe everything I wanted or everything I got to after multiple meetings with stakeholders, both from the agent side, from the carrier side, and even from some of the consumer sides and the Department of Insurance, I do believe this is that good foundation. So what I'm going to do is walk through the model and tell you where Indiana's bill has changed. And I'll just start with this. One of the first things we did in the definition is that we use adverse action in Indiana that's going to be now referenced as a material change. We didn't change the definition of what that means. The only thing we did, if you remember, one of the discussions in New Orleans was should this or should this not apply to a declination. In talking with our department and talking with the carriers, etc., the feeling was declinations needed to come out. There was no agreement of terms, no contractual obligation for me to do anything if I'm just simply saying I don't want to write your insurance. So I'm okay with that. So declinations are out. So the change to adverse action is basically now affecting non-renewals, cancellations, or an increase of more than 10%. I actually changed it from 9.99 to 10%. Because we are changing the taking out declinations, the applicant definition in the model is out. And then under the policyholder initiated changes, we've kept those in the bill. One thing we did add, or we tweaked, just moved it around a little bit, was participation in the telematics, those types of programs where I have agreed to participate knowing that could in fact change my rate negatively. I think there was some discussion yet around some language on data verification programs, property inspections that might result in changes. That's not in the bill, but as this moves through the Senate, there may be a few more minor tweaks to it. The things I'll go through next are really the core of the bill, which are the transparency requirements, where our section 4 of the NCOIL model, A and B, are in this bill pretty much, I don't want to say verbatim, but pretty much verbatim. The language is very close to matching what's in the transparency requirement. The key difference is on C. In the model, we kept in the bill the language around must be sufficiently clear and use specific language so the applicant or the insurer is able to identify the basis for the insurer's decision to make an adverse action. So that is, in this case, a material change. That language stayed because what my core of this was, I wanted to make sure that the people who are getting these notices can understand clearly what change was made. The issue really came down to the number of factors. There was some discussion on some offers were made of primary indicators, primary factors, primary. What we ended up settling on is we kept our language of the most heavily weighed factors. And so what we simply took out was the number. So it was 10, then it was 5, then it was back to 10. And now what the bill simply says is that we now use let me find it here. I had to pull my bill up. I think it is the most heavily weighed factors. And so that, I think, gets us to where we want to be on making sure that is, you're not telling me 5 or 6 things that you might use at some point in the process, but those that seriously drove this decision and were the most heavily weighed. Issues around the section D, where it says providing notice, we've kept that in. We've made a couple of changes there, making sure the agent involved, if there is an agent, some language around the captives and employees of companies. There was some concern there with, indicating that these are our employees, not technically our agents per se. And so we worked around some of that. The rules and penalties stayed the same as we have in our draft. That is, we're giving the commissioner the ability to promulgate rules and also set penalties consistent with those violations. So that, Mr. Chairman, is pretty much where the Indiana law has gone. And I'd say that probably the biggest issue of discussion is just the number of factors. Other than that, I think the bill is in a good place. And I think for Indiana, it came down to our looking at this as, I think this is good transparency. It's a good start to an issue that I think we're going to be dealing with long into the future. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you and happy to answer any questions.
No problem. Thank you, Representative Lehman. Are there any interested persons who would like to make comments at this time?
Mr. Chairman, Frank O'Brien from APCIA. I'd like to be recognized.
Go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to begin by thanking Representative Lehman. When we left New Orleans, Representative Lehman asked those of us in the insurance industry to engage with him on this issue over the course of the months leading up to and during the course of the Indiana session. We have done that and we continue to do so. And we appreciate both his engagement with us as well as his honest and forthright responses to some of the materials that we presented. This is a good product and we look forward to continuing to have the discussion when we're all in San Diego. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions for Mr. O'Brien? If not, we'll go to any other interested persons who wish to speak at this time.
Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized, this is John Schnautz from AMIC.
You have the floor.
Thanks, sir. Chairman Jordan, members of the committee, John Schnautz, National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies. Be very brief. Not going to say much different than what Frank did, but first just want to acknowledge the major changes that have been made from what was before NCOIL in November to what's in House Bill 1329, and thank Representative Lehman for those. We think it's is a great improvement. We had a number of concerns that we laid before the committee back in November, and I'm happy to report that those have been substantively addressed in many cases. As was noted, the bill as amended got out of committee 2 days ago. We are still looking at and socializing that language with our members, in particular the changes in Section 9 that go to the substance of what the notice has to include. But I hope and think we can get to a point at the meeting where we can report that our concerns have been addressed, and just want to thank Representative Lehman for the progress so far, and we hope to carry that forward. That's really all I have to say. Happy to answer any specific questions.
Thank you. Are there any other interested persons who wish to speak at this time?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is Wes Spissa with the Big Eye.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on you being the new PNC chair. Look forward to working with you in the months and years to come. I'll be brief as well. I mean, we at the Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America, we're big fans of the original version of this proposal. At the same time, though, we don't want to make the perfect the enemy of the good. I think I've heard the carrier colleagues who have expressed some concerns in the past say that there's been great improvement and that their issues have been addressed. So hopefully that'll mean that the proposal will be adopted without controversy in San Diego. I mean, we'll continue to vet it with our members as well. I'd be hopeful that the direction our company compatriots are going is a position where we'd be able to support this. I think, you know, even though the number of factors has been removed, a state that wanted to take up that issue could certainly do that on its own. The final thing I'd mention, though, is there's lots of important reasons for adopting this model, and I went through those in detail at the last meeting. I would say, though, that it's especially important to have a legislative response on this issue. And the one before you is reasonable. It's fairly narrowly crafted. But the reality is that the NAIC and individual insurance departments are already starting to act on this issue in their own way. Washington State is just one of those. And those insurance departments are doing it unilaterally and without legislative authorization. So it's incredibly important to have a model from policymakers like you that states can take up. And this may not be a model that you tell yourself, I'm going to bring back to my state, but there are a broad number of states that really need to have a meaningful and reasonable model on this issue, even if it's not your particular state. So we'd urge you to act upon this with urgency in San Diego, and appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, and the sponsor, Representative Lehman, for their work on this, and look forward to adoption in some form in San Diego. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And thank you for your kind words. Are there any other interested persons who are parties that would wish to speak at this time? All right. If not, are there any legislators present that would like to make any comments? Any legislators?
This is Senator Hackett. I just want to echo, Matt Lehman's been working on this issue for a long time, and it's a difficult issue, and he knows he's always worked on legislation that's good for the company, good for the producer, and good for the consumer. And this is to work on, and so all the work you've done on this. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right,
This is Representative Carl Anderson in South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
I just want to echo what has already been said. Want to thank Mr. Pat Lehman, and want to thank the insurance industry also for coming together and making the changes and looking at things from a different perspective when we left New Orleans. So I think everybody's on board now, which is a good thing, and we'll be ready for San Antonio. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Representative. Anybody else? Any other legislators? All right, if there are no other legislators, I just have a couple of comments. Again, I certainly want to thank Representative Lehman for all the hard work he's put in and being a man of his word and trying to work with all the stakeholders to try to get something done. I will tell you, I have a little bit of heartburn about removing the declination from the Model Act, and Representative Lehman, if you would address that just for a minute, your thoughts and reasoning behind removing that.
Yeah, I would say the part of the reason is that there was an issue around it, and this is something I think we can continue to debate, and you can bring back and see how your states interpret some of this. Some of us are around the idea that if I simply ask somebody for something and they decline to offer that to me, can I bind them to a contractual obligation to tell me why? I have no obligation established. I've paid you no money. You've signed no contract. So I went to some of our legal people and they said there's some valid argument in that. You're basically saying we're not telling you the whys of the what ifs. Again, I would say this is when I talk about this, a foundation. I really felt we had a bill that was a foundation with some pretty solid walls. And I think now the foundation doesn't have as solid of walls. So some of this is going to be back to the states in which you want to take this and have that debate. I'll stop there with your answer because, Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple of kind of maybe closing comments to wrap all this up. But if that, I hope that answers your question or where we kind of went in Indiana.
No, and that's fine. And look, I guess my only counter to that would be we have other examples like the Fair Credit Reporting Act, where you don't have a contractual obligation, but if you decline credit, that they have to respond and tell you why. But again, I think I agree with you as in the aspect of this is a starting point, and we can have those debates at our individual state levels if need be. So I do understand reasoning behind that. If there are no other legislators that wish to comment, Representative Lehman, I'll turn it back over to you for your closing comment.
All right. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here's, I guess, what I'm going to say, because I think we're just on the cusp of what's going to be a very difficult path down the road. Because I think maybe Wes teed this up with what the NEIC is doing. I've had some conversations with them. I've had some conversations in my own department, and what we're hearing is there's such a rapid rush into the AI world, and I don't know that the departments have the skill level, and I'm nothing against the departments, but actuarially and some of their review people are saying some of this is coming at us pretty fast and furious. And so I think that while this is a good start, I think we had a Senate bill that came over, and I'm carrying in the House, and it deals with just the use of your data, use of the privacy around your data. We're focused in this committee on our data being used for underwriting purposes, but this Senate bill saying, you should have a right to know every time your data is used and where and how, all around privacy. All these are going to merge together at some point in this massive world of artificial intelligence. And I think we're on somewhat of I don't want to say a collision course, but privacy and data are going to be huge issues, not just on the state level, but definitely on the national stage as well. So I think, Mr. Chairman, as much as this is going to be, I think we've got a model that will get out of San Diego. I don't think it's the last time we'll talk about the carriers and what their responsibility is to their insureds, et cetera, et cetera. And so I do want to thank the industry. We've been at opposite ends of this for some time. I feel like some of this, they came kicking and screaming. Some of it I came kicking and screaming. But I think that we got to a place where right now, as we debate this in San Diego, I do believe we have a good model to start. And then I would encourage each of you to take these back to your states and begin to see how it fits into your state, especially around the NAIC's models as they're moving. As Wes brought up, Washington State is a good example. If we don't get something on the books legislatively, I do feel we're going to defer this to the regulators in the long term. And I'm not throwing my industry friends under the bus, but I don't think that ends well when the regulators jump in versus those of us who really, I think, have a much better view of what is for our constituents, good work for our constituents. So I thank you for the opportunity to kind of present where we're at. Look forward to having some debate in San Diego and moving this forward.
All right. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for your committed hard work to this issue. So I want to make sure we reiterate that.
Thank you.
Is there any other business that anyone would like to raise?
If I could raise one more thing, I see Carl Anderson still on the phone, and he ended by saying, see you in San Antonio. I want to make sure he doesn't end up in San Antonio while we're in San Diego. So, Carl, make sure you got the right flights, okay?
Yeah, San Diego it is. All right. Well, look, with that, thank you for joining us today, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll entertain a second.
Second.
All right. All the properly moved to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Nice
You guys have a
President's
great
Day.
weekend.
Take care.